A plane is on fire. Mayday, 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 mayday. The captain has just heard a deafening bang from the cargo hold. Smoke is pouring into the cockpit. Alarms are blaring, instruments are failing, and they are losing control of the plane. The air traffic controllers are on the phone, helpless. But behind the scenes, something far more dangerous is unfolding. A chain of events that will spark decades of speculation, government cover-ups, conflicting reports, and whispers of something far more sinister. This is the story of the Helderberg incident. It's the middle of the night, 2:45 a.m., November the 28th, 1987. In the control tower at Mauritius Airport, there aren't many flights to handle at this time of night. The controllers are waiting. The next plane expected is South African Airways Flight 295, known as Springbok 295, but the plane is just out of radar range, somewhere over the vast Indian Ocean. Then a voice crackles over the radio. Springbok 295. What the air traffic controllers thought was a standard check-in by the captain soon turns out to be something more sinister. 295, good morning, go ahead. Good morning, we have a problem. We're making an emergency descent, level 140. You want to descend to level 140? Yes, we have already started due to a smoke problem in the aircraft. You want a full emergency? Charlie, full emergency. Thank you. A plane is on fire. Mayday, 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 mayday. The captain has just heard a deafening bang from the cargo hold. Smoke is pouring into the cockpit. Alarms are blaring, instruments are failing, and they are losing control of the plane. The air traffic controllers are on the phone, helpless. But behind the scenes, something far more dangerous is unfolding. A chain of events that will spark decades of speculation, government cover-ups, conflicting reports, and whispers of something far more sinister. This is the story of the Helderberg incident. It's the middle of the night, 2:45 a.m., November 28th, 1987. In the control tower at Mauritius Airport, there aren't many flights to handle at this time of night. The controllers are waiting. The next plane expected is South African Airways Flight 295, known as Springbok 295, but the plane is just out of radar range, somewhere over the vast Indian Ocean. Then a voice crackles over the radio, Springbok 295. What the air traffic controllers thought was a standard check-in by the captain soon turns out to be something more sinister. 295, good morning, go ahead. Good morning, we have a problem. We're making an emergency descent, level 140. You want to descend to level 140? Yes, we have already started due to a smoke problem in the aircraft. You want a full emergency? Charlie, full emergency. Thank you. The search continued throughout the day, coordinated from airports on the islands of Mauritius and Réunion. The 747 was about 150 miles from Mauritius Airport when the captain radioed to request permission for an emergency descent because of a fire on board. Soon after, all contact was lost. The plane took off from Chiang Kai-shek International Airport in Taiwan. It's a South African Airways Boeing 747 called the Helderberg. This is an overnight flight to Johannesburg in South Africa, with a refueling stop in Mauritius. Now, unlike a normal 747, the Helderberg has what's called a combination design. In a normal 747, passengers sit on the main deck and the upper deck, and luggage is loaded in the compartment below. But in a combination design, the 747 carries both passengers and cargo on the main deck. This forward section is the passenger area, and the rear third is for cargo. The two sections are separated by a bulkhead, and the crew can access the cargo compartment through a door. To give airlines flexibility, Boeing made a critical design choice. The bulkhead isn't fixed, it's movable, allowing airlines to adjust the amount of cargo they want to carry at will. And to accommodate this, the air conditioning isn't limited to the passenger cabin, it runs the length of the plane. But as we're soon to discover, this seemingly innovative design will play a crucial role in the disaster that is about to unfold. The search in the Indian Ocean continued, but no luck on the first day. It took 5 full days, and after an intensive search, a very grim discovery was made. Small floating debris and 8 bodies were recovered from the Indian Ocean, some 200 kilometers northeast of Mauritius. This was the first physical evidence that the plane had crashed, but apart from the small piece of debris, the rest of the wreckage remained missing. The captain is David Uis, the first officer is David Atwell, and the flight engineer is G. Fry. There are 2 other members of the support crew, but they won't play any part in the story. During the crew's initial pre-flight checks, everything seemed to be in order, except for one small detail. The captain was given a confidential document to sign, and he did. But he decided not to share its contents with his crew. 140 passengers board the plane, and 6 cargo containers are loaded onto the main deck. During loading, a Taiwanese customs official decides to make a surprise inspection of the cargo. He checks it for about 10 minutes and then signs off saying, "Yes, everything's fine." Now, an hour late, the plane takes off from Taiwan at 10:30 p.m. It climbs to cruising altitude, and the backup crew takes over from the main crew and flies the plane for the next 8 hours. The plane is on its way to South Africa. But look closely at this route. The plane seems to be deliberately avoiding land, staying almost entirely in international waters. Why is this? In the 1980s, South Africa was ruled by a deeply racist and oppressive regime. The country had stripped black South Africans of all their rights, making them a global pariah. Many countries around the world impose sanctions on South Africa, and South African Airways is banned from flying over these countries. As a result, South African flights are forced to take the long roundabout route, mostly sticking to the oceans, just like the route the Helderberg is taking here. At the same time, South Africa is actively waging war against Angola over its borders and needs weapons and technology to do so. But with sanctions in place, where are they going to get the weapons? Taiwan is also a global pariah, having been kicked out of the United Nations by China, and they are on friendly terms with South Africa. Taiwan is a major electronics manufacturer, and the 2 countries share military secrets, allegedly using passenger planes to transport sensitive cargo and circumvent global sanctions. Now, because the planes have to fly mostly over oceans where radar coverage is minimal, the South African planes rely on a high-frequency radio to both transmit their positions and discuss critical information with South African Airways headquarters. They do this via a station called ZUR. The station records all communications on magnetic tape for storage. Keep this in mind, something fishy is about to happen. The 8 bodies recovered from the crash show signs of severe trauma, and when investigators carried out blood tests on them, they found soot and smoke in their bodies. These are clear signs that they died of asphyxiation and not from the impact in the sea. The discovery of smoke, along with radio transmissions from the pilots indicating a fire, has fueled theories that the plane was bombed by Angolan terrorists. To confirm this, investigators are now analyzing some of the debris for signs of an explosion, such as blast cavities or impact marks, but they're finding nothing. But while searching for signs of an explosion, they found something more interesting: a partially melted tennis racket, a graphite tennis racket. Graphite melts at temperatures above 600 degrees Celsius, but aeroplanes are not designed to withstand such high temperatures, and there should never be anything loaded on an aeroplane that would burn at such extreme temperatures. So what was the Helderberg carrying? Officially, the cargo was listed as medical equipment, textiles, and sports equipment. But the investigators wanted to be sure, so they asked South African Airways for the original document, the master waybill. Curiously, this document is missing. It was shredded immediately after the accident. In its place, the investigators were given an official copy, a copy of a document that no longer exists. Given the geopolitical context, can we really trust these records? What was really in those containers and pallets on board South African Airways Flight 295? Sewing over the Indian Ocean, we have to focus on another container. But this one isn't on the plane, it's thousands of miles away in Belgium. And in that Belgian warehouse is a container, a copy of the cargo manifest. But given the geopolitical context, they're not prepared to accept it as the truth. They are at a dead end. They need to find the cockpit voice and data recorders, the black boxes. Both black boxes have pingers that will send signals for 30 days, after which they'll fall silent. Time is running out. It will take 21 days just to mobilize a salvage vessel and get it to the Indian Ocean, and when the team gets there, they have just 1 week before the pingers go silent. 1 week to find answers before they're lost forever. The 30th day comes and goes. Neither the plane's wreckage nor the black boxes are found. But then the investigators learn about the ZOR tapes. If the pilots had communicated with the ZOR station about an emergency, the tapes at ZOR could contain vital information. So they asked South African Airways for the ZOR tapes, and guess what? Those tapes are missing too. South African Airways claims that the tapes have been overwritten and not backed up for over 30 days. The previous day's tapes are there. The next day's tapes are there. But the tapes with the Helderberg information? They've been overwritten. With $1.5 million already spent, the pressure mounts on the search team to find answers. In a desperate move, the team uses sonar scanners to map the ocean floor. They must find the black boxes. It's their last hope. Now let's get back on the plane. At about this point, the support crew have been flying the plane for the last 8 hours and are now handing it back to the main crew to fly the last leg to Mauritius. The fire hasn't started yet. Remember the confidential information the captain received before takeoff. He decides to share it with the crew. The captain reveals that his boss told him there's a bomb on board. The first officer and the flight engineer are stunned. "Is it in the back?" they ask him. "Who else knows about it besides you?" The captain replies, "Nobody." He goes on to claim that the papers are forged and that it is a government-owned bomb. Almost prophetically, the flight engineer mumbles, "We're dead." They are interrupted by the cabin crew, who ask them what they want for dinner. On 28 January 1988, 2 months after the crash, a breakthrough was made when the sonar signature of possible wreckage was detected 134 miles off Mauritius. If this was the Helderberg, it was far deeper than anyone had ever gone before. It's 4.5 kilometers deep. Even the Titanic is only 3.7 kilometers deep. This will be the deepest and most expensive salvage operation ever attempted. To confirm that it is indeed the Helderberg, they decide to send a submarine equipped with cameras. Unfortunately, the submarine needs to be connected to a 7-kilometer fiber optic cable to transmit the images. Such a long cable doesn't exist. It has to be custom made, and that will take months. They are also strengthening the submarine with thicker walls to withstand the immense pressure the ocean would put on it. They are also retrofitting the sub with better cameras to work in the deep, dark ocean. Finally, they lower the submarine into the ocean and meticulously map the debris field, and then the images come in. Scattered across the seabed are the twisted remains of a Boeing 747. The Helderberg has been found. The debris is spread over a large area, a clear sign that the plane broke up in midair. And among the wreckage, investigators find 3 wristwatches frozen in time, marking the exact moment of final impact. They are interrupted by the cabin crew serving dinner. As they eat, 30 minutes pass, and then trouble begins. The first officer looks out of the window and sees smoke over the right wing. An explosive sound echoes from the rear of the aircraft. The cockpit fills with a deafening din of alarms. Something's happening. What follows is the start of a 19-minute nightmare that pushes both the crew and the plane to their absolute limits. Exactly 1 year after the crash, the search team made a breakthrough. The cockpit voice recorder has been found. It's buried deep in the ocean floor, but their elation quickly turns to frustration. Having been submerged for so long, most of the recording is damaged. They only have 80 seconds of audio, and frustratingly, the flight data recorder, which could have provided vital clues, is never found. It remains lost somewhere in the depths of the Indian Ocean. Investigators try to reconstruct the plane from the salvaged wreckage. They are able to pinpoint where the fire started, in a container at the front right of the cargo hold. And according to the bill of lading, the container contained only electronics and medical equipment. But none of these items could have burned at the extreme temperatures of 600 degrees Celsius. Smoke fills a cargo hold as the second stick of fire intensifies, ripping viciously through the electrical wiring. One by one, the circuit breakers on the flight engineer's panel begin to pop. Each one signals the loss of a critical system, systems the crew desperately need to keep the plane in the air. The captain reacts quickly, ordering the first officer to run the emergency checklist. "We have the fire checklist for us, please." They make a sharp descent to 14,000 feet to reduce cabin pressure and slow the deadly spread of the fire. The Helderberg's cargo deck is classified as a Class B compartment. It has smoke detectors but no automatic fire suppression system. Boeing's design assumes that the crew can fight the fire manually with portable extinguishers, since they have access to the cargo area. A cabin crew member grabs a portable extinguisher and runs to the bulkhead. When they open the door to the hold, they are confronted with a horrifying reality. The fire is far more intense than anyone had imagined. It was raging out of control, sending thick toxic smoke through the confined space. They spray the extinguisher fluid, but the small bottle is no match for the intense fire. Although Boeing designed the passenger cabin to have a higher air pressure than the cargo hold, so that opening the bulkhead door would force air from the cabin into the cargo hold, preventing fumes from entering the passenger area. This fire is burning so intensely that the heat creates extreme pressure in the cargo hold. This intense pressure reverses the flow. When the cabin crew opened the bulkhead door to fight the fire, deadly smoke poured into the cabin, suffocating the passengers. The captain calls Mauritius Air Traffic Control. 295 Mauritius, good morning. Go ahead. The fire checklist instructs the crew to land at the nearest airport, but Mauritius, the closest, is over an hour away and there's not much the crew can do at the moment. The checklist then instructs the pilot to do something few pilots have ever done before. It asks them to open the plane's door to let fresh air into the cabin. "We need to open the doors. Repeat, open the doors." But instead of bringing relief, the move pours fresh oxygen into the growing inferno. The fire intensified and spread rapidly. Thick black smoke engulfed the cabin. The passengers began to inhale soot and smoke. The crew tried to recirculate the air in the cabin, hoping to bring in more fresh air, but this also backfired. Instead of providing clean air, they are recirculating the toxic smoke from the hold, making the already dangerous conditions even worse. And with each passing minute, the crew's options dwindle. One by one, electrical systems fail, leaving them with fewer tools to fight the emergency. As the fire rages, the heat begins to distort the structure of the plane itself. Metal begins to twist under the pressure, bending in ways the 747 was never designed to handle. As the situation spirals out of control, Mauritius ATC desperately tries to contact Helderberg. The intense heat is burning through the aircraft's skin, threatening its structure. The failure starts around the cargo hold just above the bulkhead. Once structural integrity is lost, the Helderberg splits in two, sealing its fate. At that moment, the plane and everyone on board is doomed. Both halves of the aircraft will fall towards the sea and crash into the water, all within 2 minutes of the last communication with air traffic control. So what was in the cargo that caused it to burn at 600 degrees Celsius? Why was the master waybill shredded? And why are the Zor tapes mysteriously missing? What was on the tapes? While listening to the cockpit voice recordings, the investigators noticed a strange conversation. When the first officer first reported seeing smoke, the captain didn't react with surprise. Instead, he said, "That can't be." And when the engineer suggested they land at Reunion, which was closer, the captain replied, "No, I don't have a choice." This conversation caught the attention of the investigators, and then there was the reaction of South African Airways chief pilot. Woken up in the middle of the night, he wasn't even told which plane was missing. The only words he heard were, "We've lost the plane." But somehow he knew. He just knew it was the Helderberg. Investigators began to consider a chilling possibility. Maybe this wasn't the first fire the crew had encountered that day. Perhaps there had been an earlier fire on the plane and the captain had been ordered by South African Airways to keep flying and not to land. Given the hostile environment, if the plane had landed and the cargo didn't match the waybill, South Africa would have had an international incident on its hands. This would explain the captain's hesitation and the lead pilot's knowledge. If the airline had given this instruction to the captain, this conversation would have been on the ZOR tapes, tapes that are now conveniently missing. And then came another twist. Independent investigators found traces of a chemical called ammonium perchlorate, a key ingredient in rocket fuel, in the wreckage. What was a chemical used in rocket fuel doing on the Helderberg, and why wasn't it listed on the cargo manifest? All the evidence pointed to one conclusion: the South African government was smuggling arms. The shredded manifest and missing ZOR tapes only added fuel to the fire. As the investigators dug deeper into the arms smuggling theory, the apartheid government began to put intense pressure on them to wrap up the investigation and cut costs. But the government's urgency seemed suspicious, almost as if it didn't want the truth to be revealed. In the end, the inquiry concluded without a definitive answer to the cause of the fire. The questions remained, and the truth about what really happened on the Helderberg may never be fully known. But the Helderberg disaster didn't fade quietly into history. It led to critical changes in aviation safety, forcing the industry to confront dangerous gaps, particularly in cargo fire protection. The tragedy highlighted the need for safer Class B cargo compartments. Compartments like the one on the Helderberg lacked automatic fire suppression systems. Following the disaster, international regulations were tightened. New regulations required cargo holds to be equipped with automatic fire suppression systems so that the crew didn't have to fight fires with only hand extinguishers. Changes were also made to cargo documentation. The shredded bill of lading that clouded the Helderberg investigation revealed serious flaws in the way cargo was recorded and tracked. As a result, stricter documentation standards have been introduced to ensure that the kind of mysterious forged cargo records involved in this case will never happen again.